When you're programming, you'll sometimes feel like a genius and everything works and makes sense, whereas other times you'll feel like you don't know anything and you should just check to see if McDonald's is hiring.
Oh yeah!
In this video, I'm going to discuss why learning to code is deceptively simple but actually really difficult. A few days ago, I was working with someone on a React project from scratch, and as we were setting up the project and adding some code, it became clear to me that they didn't fully understand what was going on. So while I was explaining how the project was configured, set up, and what the code was doing, I realized that my explanations weren't helpful, because there was just some big gaps in their understanding of JavaScript. After the call, I thought more about the situation and what I could do to get them caught up. I also thought about what they didn't understand and why it was the case that they didn't understand these things. And I think the answer is that it's so easy to get away with not understanding and copy-pasting code that works, and then just moving on to the next thing. We're all guilty of it, and many tutorials out there basically have the learner copy-pasting code without understanding why or even where to go to know what to type and like where the code came from. And I realized that as a teacher, it's not easy to go over every single line of code. And someone doing your tutorial should have a basic understanding of JavaScript, even though they may not. I want to go over what concepts someone would need to understand to know what's going on here. If we look at the first 3 lines in this index file, we see the import and from keywords that allow us to bring in JavaScript from other files which are exporting code. This requires an understanding of ES modules versus CommonJS modules. These imports depend on default exports instead of named exports in the packages. Installing the React and React DOM packages requires an understanding of Node and the Node package manager. Line 3 is importing a React component from the app.js file, which you can see here, but it doesn't include the .js file type. This is normal behavior, but to someone that's new, it can lead to confusion. Line 5 tells us that React DOM is an object with a render method, so we have to understand JavaScript objects and their properties and methods. We can go into the React documentation to learn about the available React DOM APIs. It looks like render is deprecated in the latest version of React, but since we have it up here, we can see that it renders a piece of JSX into a browser DOM node. We can see that the method can take in 3 arguments, with the first being the React node, the second being the DOM node, and an optional callback. We see only 2 arguments in our code. If you have a little knowledge of HTML, you'll know that React.StrictMode and app aren't HTML tags, but rather JSX. So we have to start figuring out and learning what JSX is. The second argument requires an understanding of the document object model and the ID attribute. You should be able to look at line 9 and kind of figure out that somewhere in the HTML, there is a tag with an ID attribute of root. So as you can see, even in this seemingly simple code snippet, it's actually pretty difficult to understand what's going on because you need to learn a lot of concepts. And if you don't learn them, you could still get this to work and copy paste it into your code and never think about it again. But in the future, you might face a bug or some sort of issue that requires an understanding of these concepts. And if you don't have them, then you're going to be stuck. And that brings me to the point of this video, which is why learning to code is so difficult. And it's difficult because it's all up to you, the learner, to figure out how to learn what you don't understand, as well as identify what you don't understand and what you don't know. And then you got to figure out where to go to learn it. And there's thousands of resources out there, like articles, YouTube videos, documentation, courses, and you got to find the ones that work for you and make sense to you. And then you got to let the information soak in. And then you have to apply it to a project. And then you have to do it again after letting some time pass so you forget a little bit so that you really learn it. And this entire process is tough. But it's what's necessary in order to better understand and really learn how to code. But over time, it gets a bit easier. So as long as you don't give up and you keep trying, it'll make sense. I've also been thinking about a possible solution to this problem. And recently, I tried coding with ChatGPT, and I actually think it is the solution. So in my next video, I'm going to explain how you can use ChatGPT to learn to code. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned, subscribe, like, and let me know if this video was helpful or if it resonated with anything you've thought of before in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one.